So, as businesses, we often have limited resources, be it time, be it money. It's one of the things that I think as a society we talk about a lot is the limit of resources that we have.
Yeah.
How do businesses and how should they prioritize the resources? It's a lot.
So, as we have been going through the process of formulating a strategy, till this time, what we have done in that is we have allocated our time, intellectual capital, as well as energy. So, all those things are very, very difficult to do. After coming to this point, now we are putting the capital behind it.
Hmm.
The number one job of the C suite is capital allocation. Once capital is allocated, there's no way to take a U turn, it won't come back home.
Hmm.
So everything we have done so far, we have laid out the GPS, the groundwork. Now we say, okay, how much money, how much capital we will put behind every initiative that we think is worth our company's time, energy, and the strategy.
Hmm.
This is also the time when the company politics comes into play,
Hmm.
because everybody owns, and everybody who owns any of the initiatives, this is their time to shine. This is
Absolutely.
this is how they get seen by the senior management, executive leadership, and the board. So I always suggest after doing this much, we should take a step back. Now we see from a bit of a distance how these initiatives, when they're implemented, will move the company forward.
Yeah.
Will we become the leader of our chosen industry after we implement this? And who are the people who will do this?
Yeah. So, what does that look like? I know we've been kind of following along with two
Mhm,
companies
mhm,
throughout this whole process. What does that look like for our kind of new startup, the bookkeeping company that we've
mhm.
been talking about? Um, because they are going to have, very limited resources. They don't have as much runway,
I-
right, to get off the ground.
Mhm. So, considering a startup company, we see on the stage of a company's life, from the corporate life cycle. That's a very early stage. Company has limited cash flow. It's
Hmm.
a lot of energy, but that energy has to be matched by some of the wins they have to do, early wins. Uh, they company which is in early stages has to allocate all the resources they have from developing the tech stack. Like the company we're talking about, that company is going to use app and technology to do accounting work, which is normally done by the human beings. It's a kind of disrupting the whole kind of paradigm of accounting. So they have to do everything possible, all the money they have to develop the tech stack. Now things get also late. If you're talking of technology, companies like those sometimes are over ambitious. So what we do, we ask them to do budget on the 20% extra time and 20% extra cost.
That makes
So
sense.
means you will make some errors, you'll have to do some of the work again, some of the tech stack, some of the code, all those things in the QA checks. So allocation of resources become talent and capital and the time.
Absolutely. I mean, I've met more than a few tech companies, and I think all of them are ambitious. That's why they are where they are. But you're right, they do really need to allocate additional resources. Um, because I
Those
can imagine
companies, yeah, those companies have to be ambitious or they will not survive. They will
Mhm.
not get extra funding. On the back of it, somebody in that company has to hold this. Hey, we could be delayed, we could pay extra. So all those budgeting behind the scene is done by somebody who has seen other parts of the world, other types of companies, has some kind of the real world experience of dealing with this.
Yeah. And now, as we shift to our chemical distribution, they're an established company. They've been
Mhm.
around for a while, but they're really looking at a pivot, right, in their strategy. Um, how do they take resources and push them towards their goals?
So they don't have any constraint on capital allocation,
Mhm.
but time is not on their side. can they do it faster? If somebody else will do actually before, they will lose the first mover advantage. So they have two ways to do this: actually allocate extra resources and simultaneously see if there's a company which they can acquire which has done similar work. Like, for example, yes, they can do the sourcing part of this, finding suppliers and other things. Is there a company which can do global supply chain management for them so they
Hmm.
don't have to develop it in-house? So they can do also find outside company to give them some time, so they don't have to do it all by themselves.
Yeah. And I think, one thing you mentioned in our pre-work was acquisition is a great strategy for a company like this. What would they be looking for when they're looking at acquiring a company?
So they will be looking first how the culture matches, because if the culture doesn't match, it will kill the whole synergy. After
Mhm.
the culture match is done, the philosophically, does this company has every possible supply chain angle covered? Do they know how to do the regulation part of it, the regulatory, the QA? How will they move all the materials from across the world, across the oceans, and the timeliness of this? All those critical capabilities of supply chain will get this company ahead of its competition.
Yeah. And is there anything else that you feel like we haven't talked about today about capital or resource allocation that you'd want to leave someone with?
So I say this to every entrepreneur I see that who's very ambitious. Say, you will run out of cash before you run out of ideas.
Hmm.
Make sure your ideas are tested by people who have done it in the past. You have a good group of people who will challenge you in your company and even outside the peer groups. So they are not simply drinking their own Kool-Aid.
Hmm.
They are seeing an outside perspective. Then they then they are kind of making sure they have done everything to succeed.
Hmm.
It is not always about the speed. Yes, it matters. However, if you are accurate as well as you are fast, that is a killing competition. It's a killing